Hey guys, this is Devin Moreno here, and welcome to my Investing Journey channel. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about how I live for free. Now, this is not some gimmick that nobody can do or very few people can do. Actually, anybody can do this trick. And no, it's not live with your parents. You're actually living on your own, out there with a primary residence, all of your own, but you don't have to worry about rent, mortgage payments, or anything like that. Now, I did mention in a previous video that I do actually have a lot of belongings with my parents, in the sense I live there, but at any point in time, I can go to my primary residence and live in my own room or even apartment unit. So I'm first going to show you how this trick is done, and then I'm going to show you how I did it myself. Now, this trick is called a house hack, and essentially what it is you either buy a 1 to 4 unit property and live in one of the units while renting out the others, or you buy a single room and then rent out the other rooms in a house. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, duh, everybody does that. Who doesn't rent out rooms? But the very big difference between normal room renting and what I'm doing is, normally when you rent rooms in a house, you are subsidizing your mortgage. Whereas in this case, I am turning it into an investment, where after renting a certain percentage of the rooms, I not only live for free, but I also cash flow on top of that. And I can keep the house and flip it and such like that. You'll see what I'm talking about, but essentially it's bought as an investment first. So let's go into why you would want to do this trick as well. First off, this is the lowest money down option. When you do a house hack, you are buying a primary residence, and therefore you get the lowest percentage down. Now, a lot of people are used to the 20% down on a primary residence here in America. However, there are other options to go as low as 3% down. There's a 3% conventional loan, 5% conventional loans that are out there, FHA loan, and VA and USDA loan. We're going to get into those in just a moment. So you don't need a lot of cash out of pocket in order to do these investment styles, and it can get you started on your first property as low as possible. So there's two types of house hacks that I want to introduce here in this video, just so you can understand the kind of main ones. There's a traditional house hack, and that's a multifamily property. Multifamily being up to 4 units, so it's either a duplex, triplex, quadplex. Anything beyond that's considered a commercial property, so you won't be able to qualify with a primary residence loan. And then you have the single family home house hack. Now I'll quickly dive into the pros and cons and how to do each of them. So first we'll start with the traditional house hack, the multifamily. And so basically you live in one unit and you rent out the others. This is probably the safest version of the house hack. It makes a little bit less money than the regular house hack, but it's easier to keep in the long run. Because you can just move out and then just rent the unit that you were living in, then you pretty much just start off your investing journey with 3-4 units already. So this is a very, very effective house hack. However, these properties are generally not in as affluent areas as you can find in like single family. You're not going to find as many of them. They're going to be they're going to be in much higher demand and a lot more competition amongst investors. The best part is generally the duplex, triplexes, and such you're going to buy for this type of house hack are at a higher price point than investors are generally willing to pay. That's because after they pay for it, it's just not worth the investment. The return on investment is too high or too low. It's not going to be worth it for them. There's too much cash to be put into the deal, and they're not going to be able to pull it out because they're not doing any renovations on the property. So you can do it though, because your primary residence loan status means that you don't have to put that much down on the property. So there are properties out there that most investors can't touch because of that. This is also perfect if you have kids or a girlfriend or pets or something like that, because you're isolating yourself from your other tenants. So this makes this kind of the more ideal house hack strategy for most of you guys watching. And it's also easier to qualify for it than a traditional single family home. So in a single family home, you got to qualify for the entirety of the house all up front. However, for a multifamily home, you can actually get 70% of the anticipated rent that you would get in the house to qualify as your own income. So let's say you have one unit and you're renting out 2 others for $1,000 a unit. Well, that means you get $1,400 added to your income per month that the bank takes in mind for your purchase of a house hack. So this allows you guys who aren't maybe, like, if you're not making as much money and you can't qualify for those higher price point duplexes, quadplexes and stuff, that allows you to get into that price point. That's why I call this one the ideal house hack. It's just a lower market for it. It's harder to do it. So Now you have the single family home. Now this has a couple advantages on its own, but essentially what it is you're buying a larger house in a transient area. I can't stress that enough. You definitely want a transient area where you have a lot of young professionals kind of coming in and out and stuff like that. That shows that you're going to have a large pool of qualified renters and maybe the type of renters you would want to live with, but you're not having to worry. You're basically not having to worry about your supply. They're coming in and stuff like that. You also are, your rental amounts are up against apartment complexes. Generally in highly transient areas, apartment complexes are very, very expensive. So like, let's say you're in Alexandria, Virginia, it's gonna be like $2,000. If you're up here in Baltimore, maybe in the downtown area, it's gonna be like $1,500. So it's gonna get a little bit expensive for those young professionals trying to find their niche in the market. It's gonna be harder for them to actually purchase a place. So room renting is ideal for them. And then you can still price your rooms as high as $1,000 a room because everything else above it is too expensive for it to be competition for you. So this is one of the advantages of the house hack. Therefore, in this way, if you get anything that has about 4 bedrooms, usually 4 or 5 work best, you can make massive amounts of cash flow out of this. Even when you move out, if you decide to manage it continued as a house hack, you can make about $5,000 a month. And that sounds insane. Now, keep in mind, you do still have your mortgage that you have to pay. So you're not actually making that amount of money, but you make an insane amount of cash flow coming out of these type of properties. And that's something that can't be understated. I know one of my friends, he purchased a house, a duplex actually, but half of it was a house and the other half was an apartment. From that one property, he generates $4,500. And because he put 20% down, I mean, the return on it, it's like 2 years. It's like 50% is his return on investment in that house. Just because he uses it as a primary resident, it's insane amounts of cash flow coming out of those ones. And it's mostly because when you rent out by the room, it's actually more money than if you rent out apartments or an entire house. Now, the other advantages of these type of houses is higher appreciation. Single-family homes tend to appreciate better than multifamily homes. So if you buy, like I did in my property, where I bought it a little under the market value, well, in 2 years, when I decide to sell the home, because I'm not going to pay capital gains for selling a primary residence, after living in it for 2 years, when I decide to sell it, it just appreciates that much faster than all the other multifamilies in the area. So they're a little bit more ideal for what's called a fix and flip, or live and flip, actually. You live in the house and then you fix it up and you sell it after 2 years, and you just massively increase the value in the home. So you have to note a couple other things about this style of house. Number one, internet is an extra utility that has to be accounted for. So let's say you decide to rent a room for $800, all utilities included. Well, you're going to have to remember that internet is a random utility in the house that you don't generally have to account for, like the normal gas, electric, water. So you have to, once you keep that in mind, you can either add the internet in or charge an extra so much for your internet per room. Of course, the more rooms you have, the easier it is to kind of split that up. The next thing is you want to make sure you have the furniture available for it and all the other stuff, because the common areas, they're not going to want to provide their own furniture. You're probably not going to want to provide your own furniture either, not like, overly fancy or anything like that. Just enough, it's livable, it's functional. You might think to yourself, okay, 5 people in a house, that sounds absurd. Well, it's not. I actually live in one of these and I manage another one from afar, and as long as you put the right tenants in the home, which is actually easier than it sounds because you can demand a higher end tenant, as long as you put the right tenants in the home and you match their personalities kind of with each other, honestly, most of the time you're wondering if anyone's even home. I honestly, anytime I've shown this property to future tenants or anything like that, I bring them in and there's no one around. Everything's clean, everything's fine, and it's just peaceful. So, this is generally what you're going to have in a house hack. This scared the hell out of me. I have a house hack that, like I said, it's had 5 people in it. It has never been a problem. So if you can't wrap your mind around this whole concept, then you might want to start lower at 4, but you're definitely going to want to try it out. Definitely try it before you make any waves about it. I think I'm going to post more on my personal house hack just to kind of show you how it's structured and how I kind of get it going as far as like all the tenants and the different relationships and personalities. Now, keep in mind another disadvantage of this style house versus the multifamily is that you have more transient tenants. So if you keep your tenants for any longer than a year, it's actually impressive. Not because they're not going to like living there, but because oftentimes they're moving from one thing to another transient. So sometimes you keep them for a year, 2 years. There have been cases where a tenant has stayed for multiple years after that. I mean, as long as the environment's comfortable, then you're good to go. So the other thing is in one case, I have a house hack. Like I mentioned, I property manage a house hack for my friend out in another area. Well, in order to maintain it from a distance, you're going to have to think about things like, mowing the lawn or shoveling the ice and stuff like that, or maybe making sure the general cleanliness of the area is clean or taking out the trash. Oftentimes that means you're going to have to pay someone to do that, kind of be the house manager in a way. And generally you can kind of figure out who that would be in your section. Just don't get someone who's tyrannical or anything, just someone who just likes to be clean and is simply nice and friendly. And that should work out just fine. Now, the great advantage of having 5 different roommates in a house or 4 different roommates in a house is when one of them leaves, your cash flow isn't really hurt at all. Generally you have to take into account you're generally living in one of the rooms, that often makes the house free to you to live in. However, if you're not living in any of the rooms and you just still kind of keep it on the side, then you lose a tenant and you're just back to evening out your mortgage. You never have a 100% vacancy. You only have a 20 or 25% vacancy at any time. So you never have to really worry about that. Whereas the multifamilies, I mean, they do tend to stay a little longer because of the higher amount of rent that they're paying. When they leave, it actually hurts a lot more. So just a little bit of interesting dynamics of the traditional multifamily house hack versus the single family house hack. But trust me, these are a lot easier to do than it actually sounds. I managed 2 of them. They're actually great. Well, anyway, guys, that is it for the house hack. I'm going to get in more detail about my own personal house hack, answer more questions. Let me know before I post that video, what are the questions you have about the house hack and how to live for free. And I will talk to you all very soon.